What happens when the weakest link becomes the strongest chain? For Alara Moonwhisper, life had always been measured in silence. She was Omega, the lowest rank in the Silverpine Pack, a girl whose scent of lavender and morning dew marked her as gentle, forgettable, powerless. She kept her eyes down during pack assemblies, her voice soft during hunts, her presence nearly invisible in a world ruled by strength and dominance. The wolves around her moved with purpose and pride, their ranks clearly defined. Alphas who commanded, betas who enforced, and omegas who served. Alara had accepted this truth the way one accepts the turning of seasons, inevitable, unchangeable, eternal. But when Alpha Kale Shadowborn rejected her in front of the entire pack on the full moon, severing their fated mate bond with a single brutal declaration, everything changed. And what happens next, no one was prepared for. Not the pack that cast her out, not the parents who turned away, not even the ancient prophecy that had been waiting for this exact moment for 1,000 years. The claiming ceremony had drawn wolves from 3 territories. The great clearing at the heart of Silverpine lands blazed with torchlight, and the autumn air carried the mingled scent of hundreds of pack members, leather and pine, musk and smoke, the sharp tang of anticipation. Alara stood at the edge of the gathering, her thin frame wrapped in a borrowed dress of pale blue that did nothing to ward off the evening chill. She shouldn't have been there at all. Omegas rarely attended such formal events unless called to serve. But she had felt it 3 days ago, the pull, the undeniable tug of a mate bond snapping into place, drawing her consciousness towards someone she had never met. The sensation had nearly brought her to her knees in the middle of the market square, a golden thread winding through her chest, warm and insistent, leading her toward him. Kale Shadowborn, the visiting alpha from the northern reach, a pack so powerful their territory stretched across mountain ranges that scraped the sky. He stood now on the raised platform beside Alpha Darius of Silverpine, and Alara's breath caught despite herself. He was magnificent, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that felt his collar and eyes like molten amber. His scent reached her even across the crowded clearing. Forest after rain, smoldering embers, the electric charge of ozone before a storm, underlaid with cold steel. An alpha's scent, a ruler's scent. The mate bond hummed in her chest, pulling her forward with invisible hands. I need to continue building this scene toward the public rejection. I should establish. The ceremony's purpose and formality, Alara's growing hope, and fear the moment Kale notices the bond is cruel rejection, the physical pain of bond severing, public humiliation or removal, and exile. I'm at about 420 words, and Act 1 should be around 1,500 words total, so I have about 1,080 words left for this section. Tonight, Alpha Darius announced, his voice carrying across the assembly with the force of command, we gather to formalize the alliance between Silverpine and the Northern Reach. The moon goddess has blessed us with favorable omens, and the treaties have been signed. What remains is the binding of our packs through sacred union. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. The formal language meant only one thing, a mate announcement. Her fingers twisted in the fabric of her dress as she watched Kale's expression. Cool, controlled, utterly unreadable. Could he feel it too? The bond that sang between them like a plucked harp string? Surely he must. Mate bonds were mystical things, written in destiny and sealed by the moon goddess herself. They transcended rank and pack law. They were absolute. Alpha Kale, Darius continued, gesturing broadly, has chosen his mate from among the daughters of Silverpine. The mark will be given, the bond will be sealed, and 2 packs will become one family. A beautiful woman stepped forward from the crowd, Lina Thornhart, daughter of Silverpine's beta family. Her auburn hair cascaded down her back in perfect waves, and her scent of cinnamon and iron spoke of aggression barely leashed. She was everything an alpha's mate should be, strong, fierce, politically valuable. She smiled as she ascended the platform, her amber eyes fixed on Kale with undisguised hunger. The bond in Alara's chest twisted painfully. No, this was wrong. The goddess didn't make mistakes. The pull she felt toward Kale was real, undeniable, fated. Kale's eyes swept across the crowd, and for one eternal second, they locked with hers. Time stopped. Recognition flared in his gaze, followed immediately by something cold and calculating. His nostrils flared slightly, and she knew with absolute certainty, that he had caught her scent. Lavender and morning dew and wildflowers. Omega scent. Weak scent. His lip curled in disgust. "There's been a complication," Cale said, his voice cutting to the murmurs of the crowd. "I sense a mate bond, but not with the woman before me." The clearing erupted into chaos. Wolves turned to one another, voices rising in confusion and speculation. Lionel's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of cold fury. Alpha Darius's expression darkened, like a storm cloud. "Explain yourself," Darius demanded. Cale's eyes never left Alara's. "The bond leads to her." He raised one hand and pointed directly at Alara, and suddenly every eye in the clearing turned her way. "The Omega in the blue dress. That is whom the moon goddess has marked as my mate." Alara couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The weight of hundreds of stares pressed down on her like a physical force. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Shock, disbelief, cruel amusement. "An Omega?" someone laughed. "The Northern Reaches Alpha, bound in Omega? Impossible." The goddess wouldn't. "Look at her. She's nothing." Cale descended from the platform with predatory grace. The crowd parted before him, and Alara stood frozen as he approached, the mate bond screaming at her to run to him, to touch him, to complete what the goddess had begun. He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes, close enough to scent the power rolling off him in waves. "What is your name?" he asked, and his voice held no warmth. "Alara," she whispered. "Alara Moon Whisper. Alara Moon Whisper," he repeated, as if tasting the words and finding them wanting. "Do you feel it? The bond?" She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "Yes, Alpha. I feel it. So do I?" He stepped closer, and her wolf stirred within her for the first time in her life, a distant, sleepy presence suddenly awakening. "The goddess marked you as mine, my fated mate, my destined queen." Hope bloomed in her chest, fragile and desperate. Cale's expression hardened. "And I reject you." The words hit like a physical blow. Alara stumbled backward, gasping. "I, Cale Shadowborn, Alpha of the Northern Reach, formally reject you, Alara Moon Whisper, as my fated mate. I sever this bond in the sight of the moon goddess and all witnesses here assembled." Pain exploded in her chest. The golden thread of the mate bond, so warm, so right, turned to molten iron. It burned through her, searing every nerve, every cell, tearing at the very foundation of her soul. Alara screamed, clutching at her chest as she fell to her knees. It felt like her heart was being ripped from her body, like claws were shredding her from the inside out. "Accept the rejection," Cale commanded, his voice devoid of mercy, "or the pain will kill you." Through the agony, Alara gasped out the words that would free her and damn her all at once. I accept your rejection." The bond snapped. The sudden absence was almost worse than the pain had been. Where warmth had lived, there was now a howling void. Where connection had hummed, there was silence. Alara collapsed fully to the ground, sobbing, her body shaking with the trauma of severance. Above her, Cale turned away as if she meant nothing, as if he hadn't just destroyed something sacred. "The complication is resolved," he announced to the stunned crowd. "I choose Lionel Thornheart as my mate. We will proceed with the ceremony." Lionel's smile returned, sharp and victorious. She stepped forward and placed her hand in Cale's, and Alara watched through tear-blurred eyes as he lifted his other hand to her neck, claws extending to mark her. "Remove the Omega," Alpha Darius ordered, his voice tight with embarrassment and rage. "She has disrupted a sacred ceremony, cast her beyond our borders." 2 guards hauled Alara to her feet. Her legs wouldn't support her, so they dragged her through the crowd. Wolves drew back as if she carried disease, their expressions ranging from pity to contempt to cruel satisfaction. "Mother," Alara called out as she was pulled past her parents' position. "Father, please." Her mother, Iris Moon Whisper, turned her face away. Her father, Thomas, met her eyes for one brief moment, and what she saw there broke something inside her that even the bond severing hadn't touched. Guilt, yes, but also relief. Relief that she was being removed, relief that the embarrassment would end. "We have no daughter," Thomas said quietly. "You are no longer this pack." The guards dragged her to the territory's edge, to the border where silver pine lands met the wild northern mountains. Winter was coming, and already the air bit with the promise of snow. "You have until dawn to be gone," one guard said, not unkindly. "After that, you're marked rogue. Any wolf can kill you on sight." They left her there, alone in the growing dark. Galatea wrapped her arms around herself and began to walk. She had no destination, no plan, no hope. She was Omega, rejected, cast out, and winter was descending upon the mountains with lethal intent. But what choice did she have? She walked because stopping meant dying right here, right now, and some stubborn part of her, some small, defiant ember, refused to give Cale Shadowborn that satisfaction. She would die on her own terms, in her own time. The wind picked up, carrying the first stinging crystals of snow. The blizzard descended with a fury that seemed almost personal. Within an hour of crossing the border, Galatea couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The wind shrieked like a living thing, tearing at her thin dress, numbing her fingers and toes despite her attempts to keep moving. Snow piled against her shins, then her knees, making each step a battle against an opponent she couldn't possibly defeat. She had no wolf to shift into, no enhanced healing to ward off the cold. Most Omegas could shift by their 16th year. But Galatea was 22 and had never managed more than extending her claws slightly. Another failure in a lifetime of failures. Another way she didn't measure up. The irony wasn't lost on her. The moon goddess had marked her as mate to one of the most powerful alphas alive, and yet she was so weak she couldn't even shift to save herself from freezing to death. Maybe Cale was right to reject me, she thought, and immediately hated herself for thinking it. Her foot caught on something buried beneath the snow, a root, a rock. She didn't know. She fell hard, her hands sinking into snowdrift up to her elbows. The cold was no longer painful. It had moved past pain into a strange, seductive numbness. Her body was shutting down, she realized distantly. Hypothermia. She had maybe an hour left. Maybe less. Galatea pushed herself to her knees, then to her feet, swaying. Through the driving snow, she glimpsed a dark shape ahead, a structure. Hope flared weakly in her chest, giving her the strength to stumble forward. It was a barn, or had been, perhaps decades ago. Half the roof had caved in, and the walls leaned at precarious angles, but offered something the open wilderness didn't: shelter from the wind. Galatea dragged herself inside, her dress now soaked through and frozen in places. She collapsed into a corner where old hay still provided a layer between her and the frozen ground. This is it, she thought. This is where I die. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt only a strange calm. At least it would end. The pain, the rejection, the bone-deep certainty that she had never been enough and would never be enough. All would simply stop. She closed her eyes. The wind howled. Snow drifted through the broken roof. And Galatea Moon Whisper, rejected mate and exiled Omega, accepted her death with something almost like grace. She didn't know she lost consciousness. Didn't know when the world faded from white to gray to black. But she did know, with absolute clarity, the moment the warmth returned. Galatea's eyes fluttered open. She was still in the barn. Still so cold her body had stopped shivering. A bad sign. Some distant part her medical knowledge supplied. But something had changed. The wind no longer screamed through the broken walls. The air, while still frigid, no longer cut like knives. And she was surrounded. Wolves. Massive wolves. Their bodies forming a living circle around her. Their combined body heat created a pocket of warmth in the frozen ruins, and their bulk blocked the wind and drifting snow. Galatea's breath caught. She tried to count them through her blurring vision. 1. A massive male with silver-gray fur, positioned directly in front of her. 2. A slightly smaller wolf with midnight black fur, pressed against her left side. 3. A russet-colored female at her right. 4, 5, 6. They kept appearing as her vision cleared, their bodies carefully arranged to provide maximum warmth and protection. 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves, each easily twice the size of any pack wolf she'd ever seen, had formed a living shield around her dying body. They weren't attacking. They weren't threatening. They were protecting her, as if they'd been sent, as if they'd been waiting. The silver wolf met her eyes, and Alara saw intelligence there, more than animal cunning, more even than the awareness pack wolves carried. This was ancient knowledge, purpose that stretched back through the centuries. "You found me," she whispered through cracked lips. The silver wolf shifted. The transformation was unlike anything Alara had witnessed before. Seamless, elegant, more flowing water than breaking bones. In seconds, a man knelt where the wolf had been. He was older than Kale, perhaps in his 40s, with silver-threaded dark hair and eyes like storm clouds. Scars crisscrossed his bare chest, each one telling a story of survival and victory. His scent rolled over her, aged oak and winter snow and pine, with the electric charge of an approaching storm. Power radiated from him in waves that made her Omega instinct scream at her to submit, to lower her eyes, to acknowledge his dominance. She couldn't look away. "Not found," he corrected gently, his voice deep and resonant. "We've been waiting for you," Alara Moon whisper. He reached out and placed one large hand against her forehead, and warmth, blessed, miraculous warmth, flowed from his palm into her frozen skin. "We've been waiting for a very, very long time." "Who?" She managed. "Who are you?" "My name is Theron Stormcaller," he said. "And these," he gestured to the wolves surrounding them, "are the Shadow Guard. We are sworn to a prophecy older than any living pack, bound to protect and serve the one who was prophesied to come." One of the other wolves shifted, the midnight black one, revealing a younger man, perhaps 30, with coal dark hair and eyes like blue flame. "The matriarch," he said, his voice carrying an almost religious reverence. "The prophecy said she would be cast out, powerless, dying, that she would need us at her darkest hour. The prophecy said," a female voice added. The russet wolf had shifted into a woman with copper hair and amber eyes, that when she came, everything would change. Alara's mind spun. Prophecy? Matriarch? She was nobody. Nothing. An Omega so weak she couldn't even shift, who had just been publicly rejected and exiled because she was that worthless. "You are not worthless," Theron said, as if reading her thoughts. His hand moved from her forehead to cup her cheek, and his touch was so gentle it made her want to weep. "You are bound, Alara. Your power has been locked away since you were an infant, but the rejection, the breaking of the mate bond, it shattered the binding." "What binding?" she whispered. "Your parents," he said, and something dark flickered across his expression. "They knew what you were, knew the power you carried, and they feared it. So they hired a dark witch to bind your wolf, to cage your strength, to make you appear as the weakest when you are, in truth, the strongest." "No." Alara shook her head, ignoring the way the movement made the world tilt. "No, that's impossible. I'm Omega. I've always been." "You've always been asleep," the copper-haired woman interrupted. "But now you're waking up." And as if summoned by her words, Alara felt it, a stirring deep in her chest, in that place where the mate bond had lived and died. But this was different. This was older, stronger. This was a presence that had always been there, caged and silenced, and forced into dormancy. "Hello," a voice said in her mind, her own voice, but deeper, wilder, ancient. "I am your wolf, and I am hungry." Alara gasped. I can hear." "Your wolf is waking," Theron said, smiling. The binding held her silent, but now she speaks. And soon, very soon, she will show you what you truly are. The other wolves were shifting now, one by one revealing their human forms. A muscular man with sun-gold hair and green eyes. A smaller woman with white blonde braids and a fighter's build. A scarred older man, missing half his left ear. Each introduced themselves. Names Alara struggled to remember through a fog of cold and shock, and the overwhelming presence of her wolf stirring to life inside her. Theron helped her sit up, wrapping her in a cloak one of the guard members produced. "We need to get you somewhere warm," he said. "Somewhere safe. Our camp is half a mile north. Can you walk?" I think so." But when she tried to stand, Her legs buckled. Theron caught her easily, lifting her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. "Then I'll carry you. The guard and I have been searching for 6 months, following the threads of prophecy and old magic. We're not going to lose you to the cold now." "Why?" Elara asked as he began walking, the other guard members shifting back into wolf form and ranging around them in a protective formation. "Why would you search for me? I'm nobody." "You're not nobody." Theron's arms tightened around her. "You're the one the prophecy speaks of. The one who will change everything. The one who will rise when the packs have forgotten the old laws, when power has corrupted the strong and crushed the weak. You are the matriarch, Elara, and we have waited 1,000 years for you to wake." The Shadow Guard's camp was hidden in a valley between 2 mountains, protected by wards Elara could almost see shimmering in the air. Canvas tents formed a circle around a central fire pit, and the scent of cooking meat made Elara's stomach clench with sudden, violent hunger. Theron carried her into the largest tent and laid her on a pile of furs and blankets. 2 of the female guard members, the copper-haired woman who'd introduced herself as Rhiannon, and the white-blonde fighter named Kira, immediately began stripping off Elara's frozen dress and wrapping her in dry, warm clothing. "Hypothermia," Rhiannon murmured, her hands glowing faintly as she pressed them to Elara's chest. "But she'll recover. She's already healing faster than she should." "The binding is breaking," Kira added, her pale eyes sharp. "Look at her hands." Elara glanced down. Her fingers, which had been blue-tinged and numb, were now pink and warm. But more than that, they were glowing faintly, the same soft golden light that emanated from Rhiannon's healing touch. "What's happening to me?" Elara whispered. "You're becoming who you were always meant to be," Theron said from the tent's entrance. He had dressed in simple leather pants and a tunic, but somehow still radiated the same commanding presence. "The binding held your wolf dormant, yes, but it also suppressed your abilities. All of them. Abilities?" Elara flexed her fingers, watching the glow fade and pulse. "I don't have abilities. I can barely extend my claws." "Because you were bound," Rhiannon said patiently. "But you're not anymore. The bond severance broke the witch's spell. Now your true nature is emerging. And what a nature it is!" Her wolf purred in her mind. "Can you feel it, little one? The power sleeping in our bones." Elara could, now that her wolf had spoken, had made her presence known. Elara could feel the enormity of what had been locked away. It was like discovering a room in her own house she'd never known existed. Except the room was the size of a cathedral, filled with power that pulsed and writhed and demanded release. "I don't understand," she said. "If I have this power, if I'm this matriarch, why would my parents bind me? Why would they force me to live as Omega?" Theron's expression darkened. "Fear. Your mother and father are not bad people, Elara, but they are weak ones. When you were born, a seer came to them. She told them what you would become, the power you would wield, the changes you would bring. And they were afraid. Afraid of you, yes, but also afraid of what others would do if they knew. So they made a terrible choice. They bound you, made you appear weak, hoped that you would live a quiet, safe life." "Safe!" Elara laughed bitterly. "I was just cast out to die in a blizzard. How is that safe?" "They didn't anticipate the mate bond," Kira said. "Didn't think the moon goddess would mark an Omega for an Alpha. When Kao rejected you, when the bond severed, that kind of magical trauma was enough to shatter even a witch's binding." Elara closed her eyes. Her parents had done this, had caged her wolf, had forced her to live in shame and weakness and constant, grinding inadequacy, all because they were afraid. "They took our life from us," her wolf snarled. "They deserve our fangs." "No," Elara thought back. "They deserve... I don't know what they deserve. But not that. There's more you need to know," Theron said gently. "The prophecy, you should hear it. All of it." He gestured, and one of the other guard members, the golden-haired man whose name was Caspian, entered carrying a leather-bound book that looked older than mountains. Theron opened it carefully, turning pages until he found what he sought. When he read, his voice took on a formal, rhythmic quality. "When the strong have forgotten mercy, When the weak are crushed beneath power's heel, when the packs have grown fat on cruelty and forgotten the old laws, the matriarch will rise. She will come powerless, cast out, dying. She will be born of those who fear her. She will be marked by one who rejects her. She will be tempered in ice and pain. And when she wakes, she will shake the foundations. Her wolf will be greater than any alpha. Her power will heal the broken and break the corrupt. She will restore the ancient ways, or she will watch the packs fall into darkness. She will come when the blood moon rises. She will be protected by the 10 who waited. She will judge the cruel and shelter the kind. And her name will be remembered long after the last wolf howls. Silence filled the tent when Theron finished reading. Ilara stared at the ancient text, her mind struggling to reconcile those grand words of the shivering, powerless girl she had been just hours ago. "The blood moon," she whispered. "That's—" 3 days from now, Theron confirmed. "The prophecy's timing is precise. You were rejected during the full moon. The binding broke. Now you have 3 days to learn control before the blood moon rises and reveals you to every pack within 1,000 miles. How will it reveal me? When a matriarch wakes," Rhiannon said softly, "every wolf in range feels it. It's like a pulse of power that echoes across the territories. Pack leaders will know something has changed, and they'll come looking. Some to swear allegiance," Kira added. "Others to destroy you before you can challenge their authority." Ilara's hands began to shake. I don't know how to fight. I can't even shift properly. How am I supposed to?" "You can," her wolf interrupted. "You've never tried. You've only ever fought against the binding. Now there's nothing to fight but your own fear." "Your wolf is right," Theron said, and Ilara realized she'd spoken aloud. "The binding is broken. Your wolf is free. And now it's time for you to meet her properly." He offered his hand. "Come, the others are waiting. It's time for your first transformation." They assembled in a clearing near the camp, all 10 members of the Shadow Guard, forming a circle around Ilara. The night was clear now, the storm having passed, and the stars blazed overhead with cold brilliance. The moon hung full and heavy, bathing everything in silver light. Ilara stood in the center of the circle, dressed in simple clothes that wouldn't tear if she shifted. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I don't know how," she admitted. "Yes, you do," Theron said. He stood directly in front of her, his storm-gray eyes steady and calm. "You've always known. The binding just made you forget. Close your eyes. Feel for your wolf. She's right there, waiting." Ilara obeyed. She closed her eyes and turned her awareness inward, toward that vast, cathedral-like space where her power lived. Her wolf was there, massive, ancient, patient. "Hello," Ilara thought. "Hello, sister," her wolf replied. "Are you ready to run?" "I'm scared." "So am I. Let's be scared together." And just like that, the fear loosened its grip, because she wasn't alone. She had never been alone. Her wolf had been there all along, silenced but never absent, waiting for this moment. "Show me how," Ilara asked. "Let go," her wolf answered. "Stop holding the door closed." "Let me in." Ilara took a breath, held it, and then she did what she had unconsciously been doing her entire life. She stopped resisting, stopped holding herself separate from the power inside her, stopped clinging to the illusion of control. She let go. The transformation began, but it was nothing like the violent, bone-breaking shift she'd witnessed from other wolves. This was flowing, like water reshaping itself, like music changing keys. She felt her bones elongate and reshape, but there was no pain, only a strange, electric sensation as her body remembered its true form. Fur emerged across her skin, not rough but impossibly soft. Her senses exploded outward. Suddenly she could smell everything, hear everything, see in colors that had no names. And she was growing, larger than she'd ever imagined, larger than any wolf she'd ever seen. Her muscles coiled with impossible strength. Power thrummed through every cell, every fiber, demanding to be released. The shift completed in seconds. Ilara stood on 4 legs, and the world had changed. She could smell Theron's scent of oak and snow, but beneath it she could smell his emotions: pride, awe, fierce protectiveness. She could smell Rhiannon's joy, Kira's satisfaction, Caspian's wonder. She could smell the earth beneath her paws, the sap in the trees, the distant scent of deer on the wind. And she could feel her wolf, not separate anymore, but merged. They were one being, one consciousness, perfectly balanced. "We are magnificent," her wolf said, and it was true. "By the goddess," someone whispered. Illyra turned her massive head and caught sight of herself reflected in a puddle of snowmelt. The wolf staring back was unlike anything in pack memory. Her fur was silvery white, shot through with threads of gold that seemed to glow in the moonlight. Her eyes, she had expected them to be their usual green, but instead they burned with opalescent fire, shifting between colors like aurora light. She was huge, easily twice the size of an alpha wolf, her shoulders reaching Theron's chest even on forelegs. She looked mythic, primordial, like something out of legends that had been forgotten and then remembered. "The matriarch," Theron breathed, dropping to one knee. "She has risen." One by one, the Shadow Guard knelt. 10 warriors, each powerful enough to destroy a dozen pack wolves, bowing before her. Illyra felt power surge through her body, responding to their acknowledgement. She threw back her head and howled. The sound that emerged was unlike any wolf's cry. It resonated across multiple octaves at once, carrying harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Trees shook, snow fell from branches, and far away, in territories dozens of miles distant, wolves stopped what they were doing and turned toward the source of that sound, instinctive recognition flooding through them. The matriarch had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of discovery and training. Illyra learned to shift at will, the transformation becoming as natural as breathing. She learned to control her strength, which was terrifying in its magnitude. She had accidentally snapped a tree trunk in half the first time she tried to climb. She learned to navigate her enhanced senses, to filter the overwhelming input until she could focus on what mattered. But most importantly, she learned about her other abilities. The healing came first. Caspian had cut his hand while preparing dinner, and Illyra had felt the injury like a distant ache in her own palm. Without thinking, she'd reached out and touched the wound, and golden light had flowed from her fingers into his skin. The cut had sealed instantly, not even leaving a scar. "Empathic healing," Rhiannon explained, her eyes shining. "You can feel others' pain and draw it into yourself, where your wolf's power burns it away. It's one of the matriarch's gifts." The command ability manifested during a training exercise. 2 of the guard members, brothers named Dane and Garrett, had been sparring, and the fight had escalated beyond the bound of practice. Before Theron could intervene, Illyra had simply said, "Stop." The word had carried weight, undeniable authority that bypassed rational thought and struck directly at the wolf instinct to obey a superior. Both men had frozen mid-strike, unable to move until she released them. "Alpha command," Theron had said, his expression unreadable, but stronger than any alpha voice I've ever heard. They couldn't resist even if they wanted to. And the empathy, the ability to sense emotions, to feel the truth beneath spoken words, that had been there all along, Illyra realized. She had just thought everyone could do it. But no, this was part of her power too. She could taste Kira's old grief like ash on the wind, could sense Rhiannon's carefully hidden fear for the future, could feel Theron's absolute, unshakable loyalty wrapping around her like armor. The Shadow Guard became her family in those days. Each member had their own story, their own reason for being there. Theron, their leader, had lost his pack to a corrupt alpha 20 years ago. He had wandered as a rogue until he found the prophecy, and it had given him purpose again. Rhiannon had been a healer in a pack that didn't value her gentleness, that saw it as weakness. She had left before they could break her spirit. Kira was a warrior born, but her pack had demanded she mate with a male she despised. She had refused and been exiled. Caspian, Dane, Garrett, and the others all had their tales of injustice, of the ways the current pack system had failed them, and all had found hope in the prophecy of a matriarch who would restore the ancient ways, when power was measured not just in physical strength, but in wisdom, compassion, and justice. The old laws, Theron explained one night as they sat around the fire, required balance. An alpha ruled, yes, but they were checked by the matriarch, a female leader who could command even the strongest alpha to bend the knee if they became corrupt. The system worked for thousands of years. But the last matriarch died centuries ago, and the packs forgot. They let the alphas become tyrants. They let might alone determine right. And you think I can fix that? Illyra asked, staring into the flames. I think you're the only one who can. Days turned to weeks. No, wait. Illyra blinked, disoriented. How long had it been? The blood moon was supposed to rise in 3 days, but that had been when time felt strange here, compressed and expanded all at once. It's the magic, Theron said, reading her confusion. This valley exists slightly outside normal time. What feels like weeks to you has been only days in the outer world. We needed time to train you properly, so the wards bend time to give us that time. That's possible? For the Shadow Guard, yes. We're not normal wolves. Illyra, we're something older, something that exists specifically to serve the matriarch. Illyra studied the 10 wolves around her. In her week's days, here, she had grown to love each of them. Theron's steady wisdom, Rhiannon's gentle strength, Kira's fierce loyalty, Caspian's easy humor. All of them had become her family in a way her blood relatives had never been. And with Theron, something deeper had begun to grow. It wasn't the mate bond. She knew what that felt like, the overwhelming, instant pull that had connected her to Chaol. This was different, quieter, stronger, perhaps, for being chosen rather than fated. She had caught him watching her sometimes, his storm-gray eyes soft with something that looked like wonder, had felt the way his touch lingered when he corrected her stance, during training, had tasted his desire on the wind, carefully controlled but undeniable. The matriarch can take a chosen mate, Rhiannon had told her one evening, unprompted. The fated bond is powerful, yes, but a chosen bond, one built on respect and understanding and true partnership, that can be stronger, especially for one with your power. Illyra hadn't responded then, but she thought about it now, watching Theron cross the fire, seeing the way the flames cast shadows across his scarred face. Chaol had rejected her because she seemed weak. Theron honored her because he saw her strength. The choice, when it came, would be hers to make. The blood moon rose on the 7th day. Illyra felt the moment the sun set, a pull in her chest, a calling that demanded response. She stood in the clearing with the Shadow Guard arrayed around her, and she tilted her head back to watch as the moon climbed above the mountains. It was red, deep crimson, the color of arterial blood, and it seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "It's time," Theron said quietly. Illyra shifted. The transformation was effortless now, as natural as thinking. Her massive wolf form emerged in seconds, silvery white fur gleaming, opalescent eyes blazing. And then the power came. It erupted from her in a wave that rippled outward across the territories, a pulse of pure authority that every wolf within 100 miles would feel in their bones. This is what the prophecy had meant. The blood moon amplified her presence, announcing her awakening to the entire world. In Silver Pine territory, Alpha Darius jerked awake in his bed, the scent of lavender and morning dew and ancient power flooding his senses. In the northern reach, Chaol Shadowborn dropped the cup he'd been holding, his new mate Lina looking at him in confusion as he staggered against the sudden weight of recognition. In a dozen other territories, alphas and betas and warriors felt the call and knew something had changed. Someone had risen, and the old order was ending. Illyra howled into the blood moon, and this time her cry carried words, carried intent, carried a message that resonated in the soul of every wolf who heard it. I am awake. I am here. And the reckoning has come. They came 3 days later. Illyra scented them before she saw them. 23 wolves moving through the forest in formation. Alpha scent, beta scent, the cinnamon and iron signature of Lina Thornheart at the front. And behind them, unmistakable, Chaol Senophores and Embers and Ozone and Steel. The Silver Pine Pack, Theron growled, appearing at Illyra's side. And your former mate. Former mate. The word should have hurt, but they didn't. The hollow place where the bond had been was gone now, filled with her own power and purpose. "They're here for me," Elara said. She stood in human form at the edge of the Shadow Guard's camp, dressed in leather armor that Kira had helped her craft. Her hair, which had always been dull brown, now carried threads of silver that matched her wolf form. Her eyes, even in human form, held hints of that opalescent glow. She looked like a queen. "Let them come," she said. "I'm ready." The Shadow Guard ranged behind her, all 10 in human form but radiating menace. Theron stood at her right hand, his presence a comfort and a promise. The silver pine wolves emerged from the tree line. They stopped 50 feet away, and Elara watched as recognition rippled through their ranks. Several of them actually stepped backward, their wolves recognizing the matriarch even if their human minds didn't understand what they were seeing. Kale moved the front. He looked exactly as Elara remembered, tall, powerful, devastatingly handsome. His amber eyes widened as they took her in. "Elara," he breathed, disbelief coloring his voice. "That's impossible. You're not dead," she finished calmly. "Disappointed? You can't be?" He shook his head. "You're sent. Your power. What happened to you?" Lioness snarled, pushing forward to stand beside Kale. "This is a trick. Some kind of magic. She's Omega. She has no power." "I never had no power," Elara interrupted. "My power was bound by my parents when I was an infant. They were afraid of what I would become." She smiled cold and sharp. "They were right to be." "The binding broke when you rejected her," Theron added, his voice carrying casual menace. "You did her the greatest favor of her life, Shadowborn. You freed her." Kale's eyes moved to Theron, and Elara saw the moment he recognized the other man's authority. Saw him realize that Theron was older, stronger, more dangerous than he appeared. "Who are you?" Kale demanded. "Theron Stormcaller, leader of the Shadow Guard." Theron gestured to the 9 others behind him. "We are bound by ancient oath to protect and serve the matriarch." "Matriarch." Lionel laughed, but the sound was brittle. "That's a fairy tale. The matriarchs are extinct." "No," Elara said softly. "We're just very rare." She let her power flare. Not much. Just enough of the air around her shimmered with golden light. Just enough that every wolf in the clearing felt the weight of her presence pressing down on them. Half of Kale's pack dropped to their knees involuntarily. Lioness snarled and lunged forward, claws extending, moving with alpha speed toward Elara's throat. She never made it. Elara moved faster. One moment she was standing still. The next she had caught Lioness' wrist mid-strike. She squeezed, not hard enough to break, but hard enough to make her point, and Lioness gasped in pain. "You attacked your matriarch," Elara said quietly. "That's a death sentence under the old laws." "I don't recognize your authority," Lioness spat. "You don't have to." Elara released her wrist and shoved her backward. Lioness stumbled, barely keeping her feet. "Your wolf already does." It was true. Elara could see the war happening behind Lioness' eyes, her human pride battling against her wolf's instinctive need to submit to superior authority. "Lioness," Kale said, his voice tight. "Stand down." "But that's an order." Lioness retreated, but her eyes promised violence later. Kale stepped forward carefully, hands visible and empty, a sign of peace. "Elara, I don't understand what's happening here. But if you truly are what they say you are, then we need to talk." "Talk." Elara raised an eyebrow. "You cast me out. You rejected me in front of everyone. You condemned me to die in a blizzard. And now you want to talk." "I made a mistake," Kale said, and the admission clearly cost him. I thought you were weak. I thought the goddess had made an error. I chose political advantage over destiny, and I was wrong." "Yes," Elara agreed. "You were." She could feel Theron's disapproval radiating from beside her, could sense the Shadow Guard's readiness for violence. One word from her, and they would tear Kale's pack apart. But she was matriarch, and the matriarch's role was justice, not vengeance. "You rejected me," she said, "but in doing so, you freed me. So in a way, I should thank you." She smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Consider the debt paid. Now leave my territory. Your territory? Lina demanded. This is unclaimed wilderness. Not anymore. Ilara let her power flare again, and this time she didn't hold back. The air crackled with energy. Trees bent as if in a great wind. And every wolf in the clearing, even Kale, even Lina, felt their wolves whimper and bow. This is my territory now, Ilara declared. These mountains, these forests, all the lands from the northern border to the river valleys. I claim it under the old laws, as is my right as matriarch. Any who wish to challenge my claim may step forward. No one moved. I thought not. She turned to walk away, then paused and looked back. Oh, and Kale? Consider your alliance with Silver Pine carefully. Alpha Darius allowed his own daughter to be bound and exiled. Ask yourself what kind of leader does that. Ask yourself if that's who you want as an ally. She left him standing there, the shadow guard falling into formation around her as she walked back toward the camp. Behind her, she heard Kale say, "Goddess help us all." No, Ilara thought. She already helped me. Now I help myself. They returned a week later, not with an army this time, but with a delegation. Kale came with only 3 others, his beta, a tracker, and an omega carrying a white banner of parley. Ilara received them in what the Shadow Guard had taken to call in the throne clearing, a space where an ancient oak had fallen, creating a natural seat. She sat on the massive trunk. Theron standing at her right. The rest of the guard dispersed around the clearing's perimeter. "You have something to say," she observed as Kale approached. "Say it." Kale knelt, his knee hitting the ground, his head bowing. Behind him, his 3 companions did the same. "I come to ask forgiveness," Kale said, "and to swear fealty." Ilara blinked. Of all the things she'd expected, this wasn't one of them. "Explain." "You were right about Darius," Kale said, his eyes still downcast. "After you left, I investigated. Found the witch he hired to bind you. Found the records of payment. Found everything." His voice roughened. "You were bound because you were prophesied to be matriarch. Your own parents crippled you out of fear, and Darius allowed it because he feared you would challenge his authority." "I know," Ilara said quietly. "I rejected my fated mate because I was too blind to see past appearances." Kale continued. "I chose political power over the goddess's will, and I have regretted it every moment since." Finally, he raised his eyes to meet hers. "I cannot undo what I did, cannot take back the pain I caused, but I can offer you my strength, my pack's strength, in service to your vision, if you'll have it." Theron made a warning sound deep in his throat. Ilara raised one hand, silencing him. "And Lina?" she asked. "Exiled," Kale said flatly. "She attacked you. Under pack law, that's treason. I gave her a choice, death or exile. She chose exile. Merciful of you. I learned mercy from you." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "From watching you spare me when you had every right to kill me." Ilara studied him. With her empathic abilities, she could taste the sincerity, could feel the genuine regret and determination emanating from him. He had made terrible choices, had hurt her in ways that would never fully heal. But he was also trying to make amends, and that mattered. "I don't forgive you," she said, and watched him flinch. "Not yet. Perhaps not ever. What you did, the harm you caused, it can't be erased with pretty words and bent knees." "I understand. But," she continued, "I will accept your fealty on one condition." "Name it." "You will help me remake the pack system. You will support the restoration of the old laws, the balance between alpha and matriarch, the protection of omegas, the value placed on wisdom alongside strength. You will be part of the change, Kale, or you will be swept away by it." "I will," he said immediately. "The Northern Reach swears to you, matriarch. We will fight for your vision. Then rise, Alpha Shadowborn, and welcome to the new world." Over the following weeks, others came. Some came to swear allegiance. Some came to challenge. The challengers never lasted long. Ilara's power was simply too great. and the Shadow Guard made certain that anyone who came with violence left with understanding, or didn't leave at all. Illyra's parents came on a gray morning when rain fell like tears. She scented them before she saw them, her mother's lavender scent, her father's oaken earth. They came alone, without pack support, carrying nothing but their shame. Illyra met them in human form, wearing the leather armor and silver circlet that marked her as matriarch. She said nothing as they approached, just watched them with eyes that saw too much. Her mother spoke first. "Illyra, my daughter." Don't." Illyra's voice cut like a blade. "Don't call me your daughter. You gave up that right when you bound my wolf." Iris Moon Whisper's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "We were afraid. The seer said you would be powerful beyond measure, that you would overturn the natural order. We thought if we made you small, made you weak, you would be safe." "Safe," Illyra repeated. The word tasted like ash. "You caged my soul and called it safety. You stole my childhood, my strength, my very identity. And you did it out of fear." "Yes," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "We were cowards. We are cowards. And we have no right to ask your forgiveness." "No, you don't." Silence fell, broken only by the sound of rain. "But I will offer you a path to redemption," Illyra continued. "Not for your sake. For mine. Because I am matriarch. And the matriarch's role is to heal the broken, not to perpetuate harm." Hope flickered in her mother's eyes. "You will confess," Illyra said, "publicly. You will tell every pack, every wolf, what you did and why. You will become a warning to others who would cage power out of fear. And you will spend the rest of your lives working to undo the harm you caused, protecting other Omegas, speaking against bindings, teaching the value of all wolves regardless of rank. We will," Iris whispered, "anything. We will do anything. Then go. And when I call for you, you will come and you will speak the truth. All of it." Her parents left, and Illyra stood in the rain, feeling Theron's presence behind her. "Not all. You're kinder than I would have been," he said softly. "I'm matriarch," she replied. "Kindness is part of the job." He stepped closer, and she felt the warmth of him at her back. "You're remarkable." "I'm broken." She turned to face him. "They broke me, Theron. My parents, Kale the Pack. They all broke pieces off me until I thought there was nothing left." "You're not broken." He cupped her face gently, his scarred hands infinitely careful. "You're transforming. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes." He leaned down until their foreheads touched. "Broken things stay broken. Transforming things become stronger than they ever were before." And standing there in the rain with this scarred, powerful, patient man who had waited a lifetime to serve a prophecy, Illyra felt something in her chest shift and settle. Not the mate bond. That was gone, severed and burned away. This was choice. This was partnership. This was love. "The matriarch can take a chosen mate," she said quietly. "So I've heard." Theron's lips curved into a slight smile. "Anyone particular in mind?" "Someone older, scarred, impossibly stubborn." She reached up and traced one of the scars across his chest. "Someone who sees my strength instead of my weakness." "I only see your strength," he said. "I've never seen anything else." She kissed him, slow and deep and perfect. And when they broke apart, she saw the Shadow Guard watching from various positions around the clearing. All of them were smiling. "About time," Kira called out, and the others laughed. Illyra laughed too, the sound bright and free and full of joy she had never thought to feel again. The confrontation came on the night of the autumn equinox. Alpha Darius arrived with his full pack, nearly 50 wolves, all in formation, all ready for war. But he didn't come to the throne clearing. He came to the border of Illyra's territory and stopped there, waiting. Illyra shifted and ran to meet him, Theron and the Shadow Guard flanking her. When she arrived, she shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed in the moonlight. Power radiated from her in waves. Darius stared. She watched recognition war with disbelief in his eyes. "The little Omega," he said finally. "Look at you now." "Look at me," she agreed. "The wolf you tried to destroy." the power you tried to cage. I did what I thought was right, Darius said, but there was no conviction in his voice. You did what was convenient, what was safe for your position. Elara stepped forward. You knew what I was, knew the prophecy, and you were terrified that I would take your authority. So you convinced my parents to buy me, to make me small and weak and forgettable. The prophecy spoke of upheaval, Darius defended, of the old ways returning. I built Silverpine into the strongest pack in the region. I wasn't going to let some ancient legend destroy that. So you destroyed me instead. I did what any alpha would do. I protected my pack. You protected your power, Elara corrected. And in doing so, you violated the most sacred law. You harmed one of your own out of nothing but fear. Darius's eyes narrowed. So what now? You kill me? Take revenge? No. Elara smiled. I'd do something worse. I let you live, and I take everything else. She raised her voice so every wolf in both groups could hear. By the authority vested in me as matriarch, I dissolve the Silverpine pack. Its territory is forfeit. Its members are free to join my pack, to seek sanctuary elsewhere or to live as rogues. But Silverpine, the pack that forgot mercy, that caged power out of fear, that pack ends tonight. You can't, Darius began. I can. Elara let her power flare, and every wolf dropped to their knees, even the strongest betas. The old laws are clear. A matriarch can dissolve a pack if its alpha has committed unforgivable crimes. You bound an infant's wolf. You exiled your own daughter to die. You chose power over pack, cruelty over compassion. Your pack is ended, Darius. And you're exiled. You will wander as a rogue for the rest of your days, bearing the mark of your shame. She stepped forward and placed her hand on his forehead. Power flowed from her palm into his skin, and when she pulled away, a silver mark remained, the symbol of the matriarch, but inverted, a brand that marked him as oathbreaker, as exile, as cautionary tale. Let every wolf who sees you know what you did, she said softly, and let them choose differently. Darius stared at her, something like understanding finally dawning in his eyes. You're not destroying me, he said slowly. You're making me an example. Yes, that's wise. Cruel, but wise. I am matriarch, Elara said. Cruelty and wisdom sometimes walk hand in hand. She turned to address the wolves of Silverpine. You are free to choose. Join my pack and live under new laws. Laws that value all wolves, that protect the weak, that balance power with compassion. Or seek your fortunes elsewhere. But know this, the old ways are returning. The matriarch has risen, and this is only the beginning. One by one, the Silverpine wolves knelt and swore allegiance. Nearly 40 of the 50 chose to join her. The others dispersed peacefully, seeking other packs or choosing the rogue's life. Darius left alone, bearing his mark of shame, and Elara watched him go without satisfaction or joy. Only a grim acknowledgement that justice had been served. You could have killed him, Theron said quietly. I could have, Elara agreed, but death would have been easy. This way, he lives with what he did, lives with the knowledge that fear made him a monster. Maybe that teaches someone else something. Maybe it prevents the next Darius. And if it doesn't? She looked up at him, this man who had become her anchor and her partner. Then we deal with the next one. Together. He kissed her forehead. Together. And so Elara Moonwhisper's journey came full circle. She had been the weakest wolf, rejected and cast out to die. But she had survived. She had awakened. And she had risen to become exactly what the prophecy had promised. The matriarch, powerful beyond measure, who would shake the foundations and restore the ancient ways. She stood now at the heart of her territory, surrounded by her guard and her new pack. Theron stood at her side, his chosen bond with her growing stronger every day. The Shadow Guard had become her counsel, each member bringing unique wisdom and strength to help her reshape the broken pack system. The lesson was simple. Sometimes what breaks us also frees us. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the greatest transformation. And sometimes the power we need was always inside us, waiting for us to be brave enough to claim it. What do you think of Elara's journey? Have you ever had to transform pain into power? Have you ever discovered strength you didn't know you had? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next chapter, because this is only the beginning of Alara's story. The blood moon rises again in 3 months, and with it comes a threat that will test everything she's become. Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next chapter.